Now, today, our second session is going to be, I think, pretty exciting because we're joined by Helen Connolly, who's South Australia's first Commissioner for Children and Young People, and she commenced in that role in April 2017. The position of Commissioner for Children and Young People was established under the Children and Young People Oversight and Advocacy Bodies Act, and the Commissioner promotes and advocates for the rights, development and wellbeing of all children and young people in South Australia, with a special focus to engage with and listen to children who aren't usually heard. So I'm going to throw it over to Helen, who will take you through a presentation today and her perspectives on civics and citizenship in 2023. So over to you, Helen.
Thank you, Natalie. Hello, everyone. Good evening. It's absolutely fabulous to be with you all. I too am on Kaurna land, just a little bit down the road from Natalie on Morfett Street. And I would like to pay my respects to the Cultural Authority of First Nations people, and particularly any who could be online. As Natalie said, I'm going to run through some slides, basically, so you've got some visual relief. You don't have to look at me for the whole thing, and that we get to look at some other imagery. I'll take you through a bit of what my role is, and some of the things that we're doing, particularly in the civics and citizenship area, but also a bit of a rationale why, as Commissioner, I've chosen to get really behind civics and citizenship as a topic, as a thematic area, really. I'm really happy for any questions. I always say, really doesn't matter what it, even if it's not on topic, I'm always open for answering and having a chat with anyone. But it's, so I will start though by just saying that, as Natalie said, my role, I'm the inaugural Commissioner, and 6 years in, there are still plenty of people who don't know that we have a Commissioner, but my job is to position children and young people's interest, development and wellbeing front and centre in public policy and community life. I do that on behalf of all, I think it's 370,000 children in South Australia, 75% of them being kids in the greater Adelaide metro area and the rest being in the regions and country areas. So I do spend quite a bit of time getting around as to as many regional kids as I possibly can, as well as obviously kids in Adelaide and the metro area. So just really, people say, well, that's all great, but what does that actually mean? Like, what you actually do? So I think it's pretty important to say that I'm a systems advocate, so I don't work one-on-one with children who may be experiencing discrimination or such matters. It is really about trying to change the system to kind of prevent things happening in the future. So it is largely about either they're not, you know, the stuff around changing the rules. So we get to review just about every piece of legislation, policy, service framework, new strategy, models of care, you name it, anything that kind of has got an impact on population groups. We look at it through the lens of the child, and in particular the Convention on the Rights of the Child. And then we make multiple submissions, and we do that at a federal, state and a local government kind of level. So there's a fair amount of work that happens just in responding to those requests. The other thing I think it's really important is what we know is that we're never going to change anything unless we actually change the attitudes of people towards groups. In my case, it's about ensuring that everyone has respect for children and young people and places their interests first and foremost. We know that we were all children, therefore we all think that we're experts in childhood, and I think my work is about saying in the 21st century, I'm not sure anyone online was born this century, I can't see everyone, but most of us were from a different century, so it really is about trying to understand children in it now in 2023. And then the last kind of work that we do is around where we find groups of children who we really do think are experiencing systemic discrimination, whose rights aren't being upheld, who don't have access to services, and it's beyond the individual and actually is a kind of failing of the system. So you'll see on the screen things like my first port of call report, which was about a piece of work for the health system in relation to the health needs of trans and gender diverse children and young people. So again, kind of taking groups and amplifying the message to actually change the system in their favour. In terms of the way I approach my work, as an inaugural commissioner, it was there was no real plan or blueprint. So I started by going out and meeting face-to-face with children all across South Australia. Met with almost 2,000 of them in small groups and asked them what they wanted me to do. So if I was to be successful, what is it that kids thought would be the things, how would they judge me, I guess, at the end of my term? They did tell me that what they wanted me to do was keep meeting face-to-face. So even though they live in an online world, it was pretty important for kids to say they wanted to know the person who was representing them. They also said they really wanted me to find out more about the things that really mattered to them on a day-to-day level. So they were talking about bullying and cost of living and school exclusions and their preparation for the future. But they also were really keen, as you can imagine, about saying, we want you to help make it easier for them to participate in their communities. They wanted more places to hang out, more affordable sport and recreational activities. So there was a real sense of, if you could help us do that or do that for us, that would be a great success. They also had a lot to say about adults and how we relate to each other and to them. So quite a lot of conversations about respect and kindness, and also around the challenges they have, whether it be mental illness or even just getting access to other services, particularly older young people, around sexual health, those kind of systems responses. And they were talking about really getting help, the right help at the right time. Kids in the country would not be surprised to know, really were saying there's just nothing for us to do. We need more to do in that space. And also being prepared for adulthood. I think for all of you who are educators know that kids commonly want us for more life skills. What's interesting when they're talking about is tax and voting and super and all those kind of things. So they really, again, were saying, can you do something about that? And the kind of common unifying thing for all of them was, can you just make school better for everyone? So that's the priorities that I then set about working on. And I've done that over the last few years in multiple ways, whether it's in big kind of consultations I've done with kids on deep dives into topic areas and then writing reports, whether it's getting kids in front of people who make decisions, ministers and the like, to actually let them inform directly. So there's a whole range of activities that make up the kind of advocacy agenda I have, which is based on what kids have told me. So one of the things I think became really obvious in the work that I was doing was there was a kind of narrative coming through from many of the adults who I was in conversation with as well about their concerns around the young voter registration and low, voting rates that were dropping. We were also looking at data which was showing that we were having poorer NAP results for civics compared to the national average. It was pretty obvious from the conversations with kids themselves that there was quite a bit of frustration with our civic institutions, and they were concerned about who do you trust. We've had multiple commissions and inquiries over the last few decades that have really torn down institutions of whether it be banking or politics or religion, sports. All of them have kind of pulled back the curtain and shown kids some of the things that I don't think any of us would be overly proud of. That in itself leads to, I guess, a sense of not knowing what to follow anymore, who do you listen to and who are the trusted voices. and actual participation barriers as well. So we've taken, so I guess this is a constant process of trying to work out how to get some change in this space. So it's been very much about taking what kids have asked for, taking what they say when we get into small groups, matching that against what adults and educators have told us, and trying really to chart a way forward. Just wanted to touch on some of the things, and I've just recently put out a bit of an issue brief on barriers to participation, because the other thing that kids are saying is even for us for those who want to have a say and really want to connect and do something in their communities or within the citizenship space, a lot of the processes of consultation currently employed don't allow under 18s to participate, or when they are participating, it's very much limited to what someone believes is a youth issue rather than it being issues that impact all young people. They're talking about things like when there's a fair bit of frustration for those who have participated previously, that they never get feedback on what's happening, or that their competencies are often underestimated, or that the kind of they're not seen as a priority for government. All of those, I think, have created, again, a group of kids who really want to have a say, but don't have the space or the place to be able to do it, or don't know the opportunities that are available to them. So we've taken so essentially what we've done is taken all of this information available to us and said, all right, what is it that we can actually do as a statutory office? So I report to the Parliament. I have got a fairly free rein in terms of the kind of things I can do, but it is public money, and there is a sense of we don't want to be doing things that are overly political. We don't want to be doing things that are high risk. We don't want to be doing things that perhaps aren't going to achieve the results that we really want to. So I've created, I guess, some areas of work that I think it's worthwhile just taking you through and showing you. They're just slides of the kind of things we've been doing in the civics and citizenship space. So it started out, I've been very interested in the low voting rates. Voting, as you all know, is a two-step process. I think for most kids, they really struggle with that concept that you have to register and then you have to do something different and then you have to go vote. So I think what some of the things we've been talking to them about is to raise awareness of this, because most kids have said unless they did legal studies in year 11 or 12, they really kind of forget the whole what's involved and what you need to do. Been a fair bit of lobbying to the attorney, to the Electoral Commission, to anyone who'll listen about saying, can we change the way that we actually, can we have people enrol on the day of voting to actually get a higher turnout of young voters, those kind of things. So a lot of advocacy, but then some really cute stuff around, we did TikTok. So our things for voting this year was on TikTok. So we did a whole, I think it was a 3-week TikTok campaign that used young people who are connected to our office. So whether there are volunteers or staff. So we did a lot on that. And the other thing we did was in the local government elections was to take a group of, to try and find all of the young candidates running in local government and give them support. So bring them in, introduce them to each other and support them through how to pitch, what kind of things will turn adults on and off when they're door knocking, a range of those. So we had some great work that we did with, I think there was about 19 young candidates, and I reckon some of them got up, which was pretty impressive. So that's our voting stuff. I think the other thing that we've been doing is, and hopefully some of you will have seen Why Change, which is an Action Civics resource. I know Natalie and spreads it widely and is a great supporter of this resource. It was developed, I think COVID has altered the time-space continuum for me. So I think it was pre-COVID, but can't remember what year, but anyway, not that long ago. So we did design with educators and particularly with students some action-based civics resources which are available called Why Change. The other thing that we do, which I think is my postcards project. If any of you have been in primary schools, hopefully you will have seen this initiative. This is very much about Article 12 of the Convention on the Rights of the Child. This is about giving children their voice and agency. I've had, I think, 40,000, even more now, more than 40,000 postcards from 8 to 12-year-olds across the whole state, from the APY, across all the regions, across the whole metro area, where kids actually, generally, it seems very freely able to provide responses to 4 very simple questions about things that are great in their lives, things that aren't so great, and what they would do to change that if they're in charge. Again, this is all on my website, and it's really interesting. It gives a real insight into the lives of children. The other thing we've been doing is building the capacity of others. I could say it's all very well for my office and for me to get out there and talk to kids, but what is it that we can do to encourage others? So we do have some very small grants, but we provide them essentially to groups who want to get better at connecting with their own communities, listening to their kids, and charting a way forward. So we give them some money to help them do that. And that's been a really useful way of getting everyone to kind of be able to position kids' interests in the same way as we do. And we've had arts organisations, community organisations, youth organisations, etc. The other part of the grants program is we do is a period positive grants as well to actually, I guess, in response to period poverty and period justice issues. Other thing, jobs were not surprisingly one of the feeling prepared for adulthood that many kids talked about, even quite young kids, was feeling that maybe they didn't have the skills they needed to get jobs. Lots of them hear about things like jobs of the future and feel quite concerned about not feeling they're learning the kind of 21st century skills they might need for those jobs. So we've been working with others to actually just produce a series of small videos on what kind of opportunities there are. But we'll continue to work in this area around what's a good employer of young people and what they actually need. And then what we're doing today, so we've been I think our partnership with Natalie and Parliament House has grown through our Why Change work, where we went looking for expertise in civics, and we found it in Natalie. And so Chair and Parliament House have been amazing, and we've worked really well together. So these Civics and Citizenship seminars for teachers are one example of actually trying to coordinate our resources, I guess, essentially, and to have more leverage. So rather than everyone just doing their own thing, really trying to have a way of connecting easily to teachers across the state. The other thing, and that also off the back of that, we created a Civics and Citizenship network that we meet quarterly, where we come together and we kind of workshop it together around who's got what and what can we use and where are the gaps, and ensuring we're not duplicating resources. And then the final thing, which I wanted to not the final thing we do, but certainly for this part of the presentation, I'm really keen to share with you the work that we've been doing over the last year, maybe even, to create a one-stop shop for all things civics and citizenship. So I am going to see if I can get to how do I do this? New share. I'm going to do a new share. I'm going to take you to this Civics and Citizenship website for your, oh yeah, here we go. Let's see, there it is. So hopefully you can see that. Yeah, okay. So this is, I should probably do a drum roll or something, because this is the first time we've shown it to anyone outside of us. So this is live now. So it's our, yes, our great big launch is what you're seeing. And it is Civics and Citizenship website. I'm going to just quickly take you through, because I think it's pretty cool. So we've obviously got for young people, there's a, I'll take you, yeah, does it work? Oh, yeah, it even clicks through and everything. So we've got on that, so this is a whole range of things around the UN Convention, the My Act, the South Australian Outcomes Framework for Children and Young People. That is the official framework, how we measure children's wellbeing in South Australia. And we've got other pieces of legislation that we think are kind of critical seminal pieces that kids need to have in terms of knowing their rights. When it comes, let's see. Oh, it's always good when it works, isn't it? So we've got then a range of civics opportunities on here. So this tab is essentially saying that for young people who want to go on and find out for themselves, it does have these kind of resources. So it tells you what's happening in things like the Youth Leadership Program, the Adelaide Hills, the Youth Affairs Council, Children and Young People with Disability. I think if should I just click through one? Should I just pick, should I pick this one? So if I click on there, you'll see then it goes through to their website, or their information. So again, it kind of tells you then, should I click again? I'm worried if I keep clicking, I'll get lost and I'm never going to get back. But there's definitely here, then you can click through and find out and go directly to that organisation. We've got places to visit. Ta-da. So all of the kind of, if you were coming in and planning a bit of an excursion to Adelaide, or you were coming to do a Parliament House visit, all the other things that you might want to do in town, but also civics and citizenships opportunities around the state. So here we go, the Hellenic Museum. There you go. You're all going to find out something new. Did anyone know where it was? Award points if you knew where it was. It's I don't even know where that is. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, how do I get back now? Okay, so you can see what's happening there. They're educators, very much similar kind of resources, although the educators do have these education resources, which is Why Change, the Directory, SRC, Child Rights, Civics Awards. So all of the awards, like the Governor's Civics Award, I assume, should I click in here? So I think this one then clicks through the Governor's Civics Awards, Young Citizen of the Year Awards, the Aboriginal Achievement Awards. So there's a range of awards for those who view looking to recognise your students. So we think that's a pretty important thing. And then obviously the teach seminars we're on, but also the Civics and the City grants, which is the grant program that we run in conjunction with Parliament House as well. So again, all the things you need, how to apply, who can apply, those kind of things. The next tab along is really about our engagement toolbox. This is so this has got I get a lot of local government, government departments, those kind of people saying, well, how do you do that? How do you actually connect to young people? What do you do with them? So we thought we would create this field guide, essentially, which is how to run a focus group, how to host a workshop. So again, very much the how. I think often we find resources easily on the internet about why you should do it, but less about how to actually do it. So these are very practical, how to develop a survey, those kind of things, and other resources there as well. When it comes to, and this is probably the next bit is the bit that's taken us the longest, because what you find, because this is a searchable function. So I said when we were making this website that I really wanted was like when you're shopping online And if you go, you can just, you know, put in you want a, I don't know, 50 centimetre telly from, you know, wherever, and it will give you all of the options available to you. So this is very similar. So this is, we want to know something about, which one should I pick? I don't know.
Legal and courts.
Legal and courts. Let's go. So we'll go legal and courts. Then what should happen? It worked. Okay. So you end up with then all the resources coming through around. Look, Findon High, I've got a courtroom classroom. Who knew? So I think we've got courts, we've got courthouses, courthouse museums. So then you can click through. We might go to this one, Youth Law Australia. And again, it will click through, and then you can click through again. Let's hope the second click works. And then you, okay, it's working. So you end up then with a whole range of resources. So we are thinking, I think it, you know, I'm hoping this notion of a one-stop kind of go-to place that's got everything, not everything, but certainly increases the resources available to educators in the community. I think it is doing what it says on the box, because I think it's actually got so many resources. We think, is there 200 and something individual kind of listings? We do want to keep adding to it. So there's also space on the site where people can send us kind of, would you mind adding this? We'll have a look at it to make sure it fits within the civics and citizenship realm. It's pretty easy. Everyone tries to get me to put their stuff on my website, but we just need to kind of have some due process and due diligence around that. But from kind of authorities in South Australia, it should be a no-brainer that people will be able to have their resources linked on the site. So it's got, as I said, so this place for young people, things for educators, an engagement toolbox, and the Civics Directory. And we think that all of this, combined with the things we're still doing, is really, I guess for us, we see it as a pretty significant contribution to civics and citizenship in this state at a very practical level that complements the work that I do in an advocacy space. I think that's about half an hour of talking, so I think that's probably enough for the minute. So I'm really happy if there are any questions, or if anyone, whether anyone has got any commentary or things immediately you think, oh, this is missing. Someone always says, why haven't you got such and such? And then you go, oh yeah, why haven't we? So if you've got any of those comments, I'm more than happy to hear from you. If you can put it in the chat. I've got two screens, so I'm looking at the chat over here.
Helen's just asked you, Helen Noakes has just said, where was the directory for excursion options?
Is that, yeah, good. I think that was places to visit. So you go, so back under young people. So we left it there. I don't think is it in education resources as well?
No, it'll be in the civics.
But in the Civics Directory, let's go there and see if there's a search. So I think what you end up with is you can search through all sorts of things. So if you were interested in Aboriginal history, what happens there? Oh yeah. So you can go to Tandanya, History Festival, Reconciliation. So there's quite a bit. Some of them are places, some of them, here we go, Living Ghana Cultural Centre, Southern Cultural Immersion. So again, you know, people living in Marion know about this place, but people often outside of Marion won't have any idea of what you can find down at the Living Ghana Cultural Centre, which is a beautiful spot. So yeah, so it's kind of, I don't think we've got a searchable button that says places you could go on an excursion, but we could maybe do that. So we'll take that as being something, yeah, that could be of interest.
One of your next questions was whether why change is appropriate for year 5-6 students and a good place to teach civics and citizenship.
So yes, so why change was developed. So we piloted it with both primary school and high school students and with educators in both centres. And what it essentially is a dial it up, dial it down. So you can do it with grade 5s and 6s. It's just about ensuring that you would deliver it in the way you would to your students. So it's absolutely usable. It's got a lot of democracy in practice. So I think its real value is using democratic ways in a classroom setting. So there's a lot of conversation about equity, around quality, around rights and around voting, but done in a way that's very student-led. So it's such a beautiful resource that it's all very, we say if you want to register, we can send you out a hard copy of it because it's glossy and heavy and it's foldable and you can stick it on the photocopier and there's a whole heap of activity sheets that go with it for kids and we've had really good feedback on it. That I think the group who pick it up most would be our student teachers, so pre-service teachers, because it gives them ready-made activities and classroom kind of products. But definitely why change, the aim of it was to be able to dial up, dial down, go in and out. You don't have to follow the whole thing. It was designed to be 10, I think it was a whole term's work. It hasn't ever seemed to work like that, but people can use, they might be teaching a particular curriculum area and there might be a really lovely resource that they can use from Why Change in that way. It's all about action civics on the things that kids are really interested in. We piloted it at Mark Oliphant, at Marriotteville, Elizabeth Vale. So we did St Andrews. So we had it at all sorts of different schools and all of them were able to get some value out of it. So one of the other questions that has come through is around how to ensure that youth voices are taken seriously by our politicians. I guess it's a really interesting kind of piece of work. I guess my whole existence is about getting people who make decisions to actually consider the interests of children and to take them seriously. So there's a taking their issues seriously, and it's also about taking the issues that impact on children seriously. So I think there's the kind of traditional advocacy would be a fair amount of what we do. But in terms of getting kids' voices raised up, I run a SASRC, which has, I think, 160 kids from across the state that meet, and they're working on areas that in schools that they think are really important around inclusion and diversity, mental health, transport and the environment, and youth voice. So those areas. So part of the process of part of bringing that group together is putting them in front of politicians. So we have all of our MPs, as many MPs as can get there on the day that we hold our summit, come and sit informally. They don't have a role other than to listen to the kids. And what we've found is that often I'll get asked now about, well, Helen, you're the one who goes out and asks the kids, find out about this. So they're asking more and more about me presenting them the views of children. The other thing is really importantly is that all of the submissions that we make, of which there are many, none of them are about what Helen Connolly thinks. They are all about what I've heard from children. So there's a whole heap of ways I think that we put written words from children, we put our postcards in our submissions, and we really want people who make decisions to understand that children talk about really serious things. So I think one of the things that shocks people is I get a fair bit of, well, surely all they talk about is, you know, chocolate and unicorns and rainbows and, you know, things like that. And one of the things I say is those things do delight me. And so when I get things that talk about, you know, the world would be better if you could have cheese for every meal, or the world would be better if, you know, everyone could do a triple backflip, I think they're beautiful. But I don't get a whole heap of those. I get kids who actually have a very thoughtful view of climate change, of pollution, of bullying. So they are talking about some pretty significant issues that do have implications for them as adults. And that's the kind of messaging we try to get through to adult decision makers, which is about, we can't just ignore these things. They are canaries in the coal mine. They are telling us about their future. And we need to be thinking constantly about how this lands on us as a community. So when kids are saying things worry them, we should all be worried, I think. Yeah, look, this is really good. So this is one of some of the best examples of civic action. You know, I rate the school strike for climate, I think, as a initiative, knowing that it didn't start here, but it has been picked up. I think in terms of the work that I do, I was on with a group last night who were online, and we were discussing transport. So there's a group that are meeting to try and get a zebra crossing put outside a school in the southern suburbs. So they're doing a lot of work in terms of surveying. There's other students meeting with local council around about what it takes to get a petition up. They've been writing to their state members. So that I think is, they've only met like once and they're doing all this action. I think stuff like that's pretty impressive. I think some of the work that's been happening around period justice and the push around getting products, those in schools, I think has been pretty impressive. I think that's a really positive student action. I'm just trying to think. Look, I think, to be fair, every day I kind of connect with young people and I go, wow, that's pretty amazing that they've actually managed to do whatever it might be. We had you know, kids who are auditing their school libraries for books that are to kind of work out how many books there are that have trans and gender diversity in them, those kind of things. So I do think there's just so many very impressive things that young people are doing. And then there's all the work that happens in our youth councils. So I also have the privilege every year of going to the Young Achievers Awards. And while there are a lot of older young achievers, some of the teenagers who take action in their community to make you know, places safer. Marion has done a lot of work around creating safe spaces and getting council to acknowledge the need for safety. Yeah, I think there's untold. And it's always really pleasurable to hear. Our young people and children send the postcards. So the postcards, so my postcards project is a primary school initiative. So that one does rely generally on kids being able to write themselves. Some regional schools will do the whole school, and that's fine. So they'll have 6- and 7-year-olds do it as well. In terms of, but I've just started a new postcard for the early years. So the preschoolers now have a postcard. It's an online card and it's about a drawing and an explanation of their drawing. So if anyone's interested in that, I'm pretty sure that's on the website, my website, not the Civics and Citizenship one. So the early years postcard, and then most of the work, the kind of equivalent of a postcard in the over 13s would be through surveys. And I have a huge kind of uptake on the surveys I do. It's not unusual to get 600, 700, 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 kind of responses from kids. So they get their voice heard in that way. So yeah, so the early years postcard, and kids send stuff through all sorts of medium to me. The other thing I think that you might want to have a look at, and this has just come in, is into my head is we run a website called hub_ADL. I think that's what it is. I'm just having a look. So Hub Adelaide, and we're trying to create an online student mag, for want of a better word. So it's a place where kids can go and submit their artwork or their story about their band or whatever it might be. So again, we really have been trying to encourage any schools that run their own magazine to submit, because it's great to be noticed amongst your own school community, but being noticed across the whole of Adelaide is a big deal for kids, and there isn't a space where they can actually do that. So we're really slowly building it. It's run by a group of young people here, like volunteers. So there's only so much they can get through, but we're trying to pick up some momentum and speed around that as well, to really showcase the positive things that kids are doing in their local community. So again, about trying to change the narrative of they're all apathetic and don't care, and actually starting to say, actually, they're really creative and they want to be connected, they want to contribute. So that's one as well. I think Emma's trying to stick some stuff in some links for you.
And then I'm not sure if you caught Amy's question about when do you go out and see children? Like, do you run sessions or pop in for conversations?
So I go out a lot. And so they're generally, so I don't just pop in. I don't know that many schools would be very happy if I just popped in. I'd love to. But it's generally, so my sessions are just about always in schools. So I run a whole heap of different types, but my school sessions are pretty now formulaic. So it's a topic area. So at the moment, I'm doing a whole series on wellbeing. And I'm doing them for wellbeing for years 8, 9 and 10. So again, a kind of lost group often where they're lumped in together. And what I know is that 8s and 9s and 10s are quite different in their interests, motivations, and what their wellbeing is for them. So we're doing conversations. They're an hour. We take whatever the school, so they'll either give us their leadership group or they'll put it out to anyone who's interested. So we leave it to the school to choose, or kids. We have usually about 15 to 20 representatives, and then I engage in the high schools without anyone from the school in place. In primary schools, it's with a teacher in the room. And we have a conversation about those kind of topics. So I've done hundreds of consultations with thousands of children over the last 6 years. And I've also do things like I'm trialling a new engagement tool for students with, so I've done 2 big whole cohort sessions with Norwood International. I'm going to Wollonga, I've got Valley. So schools ask me to come in and do bespoke pieces of work, and if it fits with what we're trying to do, that we do that. So look, they're all slightly different, but this week I was at 2 schools yesterday. So yeah, it would be every Tuesday is 2 schools, and then generally 3 online sessions a week with other groups of kids. So you know, plenty of input. So the question here around where kids are kind of, where most demand for action and change is coming from with kids. I think I have to say, and I think one of the things that really does, I don't know if it surprises me or if it's just the way it is, that our kids, as we know, are so sensory, like they're doing 10 things at once, you know, they're listening, they've got earbuds in, they're talking and they're typing, and they're quite used to a lot of sensory overload for me. But they talk to me a lot about being bored at school. So the one thing that kids, and the one image that they continually pick out of, I've got a photo library of for kids who haven't got words to explain, and the one of the girl who's bored is the most commonly picked photo. So no, it's pretty universal. It doesn't matter if I'm going to the group of kids who are the student leaders from, you know, a private school through to a group, a public high school. It doesn't really matter what sector, what kind of kid. They are finding that school isn't meeting, I guess, the kind of things that they're used to, and it's a very passive engagement. And for those who are now more, so their consumption of social media in particular is often quite creative. So they're actually doing stuff. So this passive relationship, I think, is really part of their big thing they want to change. So that's in the school front. And obviously, you know, bullying, I have to say, would be universally one of the top topics out of the 40,000 postcards. So for primary school kids, it would have to be, it's the number one, followed by climate change. So, and really worrying about our lack of investment in climate change conversations with them. So they understand that as adults there are limitations on what we can and can't do. They're not as understanding on the limitations of us talking to them about it. So I think there is a need for us to have a really close look at how we have those conversations beyond oceans and plastic in grade 5 and 6 to continue it through the whole of their schooling. So that's a really big one, I think. We've got a couple of questions. And I think that's it. What are some of the best forms of communications from young people to government leadership you've seen? Written docs, verbal presentations. I think it's a both. I think it's really, you know, I'm in the business advocacy as well. So if I just sat in my office and wrote all day and never followed up with any of my own kind of emphasis or trying to use relationships. So I think it's the same. I think what we need for kids is they need ability to create relationships and actually written stuff as well. I think one of the things we need to do with kids is to always tell them that, and this is quite tricky because they come through an education system where they're often picked for their individual leadership skills. So we pick the leader, but we don't necessarily teach them how to be representative. And so one of the things about my SRC is about saying, this isn't about you and your personal development. This is about the change you can make in the world. And to do that, you have to be representative. So if you tell me that you think X is important, I want to know, do your mates agree with that? And do the rest of the kids at your year level think that? Or is this just a you thing? And I think that's the really important lesson when you take them then to meet with people who do make decisions, because no one's going to make a decision based on this thing that I reckon we should do X. It is about being able to take them there and say, we have talked, we talked to, you know, X number of kids and this is what they think. And one of the best examples of that was actually my, what turned out to be my sex education report. So that was a group of kids who came to Youth Parliament who put up some ideas around consent education. Youth Parliament obviously is a real parliament, so nothing much happened. I brought them in. We talked about what it would take to actually turn that bill into something more meaningful. We decided we would see how much of an issue it was for a group of young people. We surveyed, I think, 2,000. There were thousands of them. Anyway, we wrote an amazing report that's got so much traction within health around and education around trying to actually now make those things happen. So again, the group of 10 kids in Youth Parliament turned into 2,500, turned into a strategy. So I think that's a really good example of some stuff we've done. And what are some of the things where young people feel like they have a say in and able to influence change compared to what they feel they can't change? I think one of the things, you know, I think most of them don't. So if I look at our younger kids, so as I said, bullying and climate change being the kind of issue, the sentiment that comes out, so the universal sentiment is no one takes us seriously. So we are kids that no one takes seriously. So I think our primary school kids think that they are just, they have no agency and they're just kind of bobbing around in an ocean of adults, really. And then I think when it comes to young people, so high school students, I think they really struggle to have meaningful input into decisions that impact their day-to-day lives. So I think the environment where kids spend most of their time is school, and it's probably the environment where they feel they have the least ability to influence. And I know people are doing stuff around voice and student leadership and all the rest of it, but I think in terms of a broad population of students, it's pretty limited to be able to just say really in things that matter to them. Anyway, you're trying to shut me up now, Natalie. You think I've had enough?
No, but I was just thinking when you said the word agency for the students who are in public schools or the teachers that are teaching in public schools, they've just had the purpose of public education content come out, and the major impact areas, one of them is specifically learner agency and having students feel like they have a voice to agency and having a say in owning what they learn. So when you were making the comments feeling like that they just don't have agency, like that's now incorporated in like the purpose of public education that's coming out. And so I see it as a really great opportunity for us to bolster our civics programs because they need civic skills to encourage that, agency.
Yeah. And one of the things I'm just piloting this year is a student charter workshop. I did the whole of year 12 at a school and then the whole of year 7. And so in terms of using a deliberative process where the kids talked about who they were, what their interests were, and then went through a series of how they wanted to be celebrated, how they wanted to be included, how they wanted to feel part of the school community, and then what their expectations of the school was to them. So I'm trialing it and I'm open to keep trialing it. It was a whole day. It almost killed me. And there were 280 year 12, so it was way too many for one person to manage. But anyway, and then we did 180 year 7s. And now I'm trialing half day and mixed bag, all sorts of things to hopefully create a product that schools can then use to drive agency. Because when you hear en masse children actually being engaged, and all of the teachers have been really positive in their sense of this is more than we expected, and it's made us have to really think about the way we do things differently. So it's had huge impact just in terms of their relationships with their students, their behaviour management, but also that student agency and kids kind of going, oh, well, people actually came and asked us stuff. So yeah, there's some really interesting work that we're doing at the moment. All right.
I was just checking to see if there were any final questions that anyone has dropped in the chat for you, Helen, but I think you've covered everything. And what I might do for all of the people on here is I'll extract all of the links and all of the websites that you've mentioned from your session today, and I'll send them as a complete list to everyone afterwards. So if you feel like you've missed it or you lost the flow with the chat, I'll make sure that you get like Hub ADL and Why Change and the postcards and all of those different sites as a collective afterwards.
Thank you.
I haven't seen any other questions come through. So I thought that I would say a huge thank you to you, Helen, for joining us. And I always find it really inspiring to listen to you, and very tiring because I'm not entirely sure how you can manage all of these things, plus like the other work in all of the other spaces that you're paying attention to. Oh, I did see someone. Did someone just pop up their hand in the reaction screen? I certainly don't want to step on your toes and take all of your Helen time. No? Okay. Well, anyway, a huge thank you to you, Helen, for joining us tonight. I'm very grateful. And I highly recommend playing with that resource tool on the website. As soon as I saw it, I almost screamed with excitement. And then I sent through Helen's office a list of about like 5-10 extra resources that I wanted to add to the list. So I really think that you'll enjoy that resource. And thank you so much to Helen and your office for putting such a fantastic tool for us together. So to wrap things up for the evening, I just thought I'd mention that next week's session is a panel of mayors from different local government areas around South Australia, including regional through the District Council of Kimba and Berry-Barmera, but also Onkaparinga and the City of Port Adelaide. And it's an opportunity for you to put questions to mayors of local governments and ask them about how local governments can be working more with schools and what they're doing to get young people to understand how they can connect with local government. So I'll drop a link in the chat to the future sessions in case you haven't registered for that one and you're really keen, or if you're interested in any of the future ones, and also a link to the feedback form where I'm just keeping a track of how these sessions might be helping you in your classroom and what we can better do to support you. Hopefully with all of that, you're feeling pretty empowered with thinking about student voice and student agency, and we will be back next week, and you should get your certificates tomorrow afternoon. So thank you, Helen, and thank you everyone for joining us tonight.
Thank you. See ya.